Well, hello and happy Friday to you. It is Sarah Jane from Access Your True Nature, where I help strong, sensitive, beautiful women just like you fall back in love with their lives. Some call me the love warrior because that is, in my opinion, what we need more of in our lives to be able to create a positive impact and live more fulfilled and show up so that we can create this ripple effect of love and light energy out into the world. So say hi if you're watching. Thank you for being here, and tell me what one thing you're going to do today that's going to get you to kick fear to the curb and come back to the present. In fact, close your eyes. Just close your eyes for a minute. And if you want, put your hand on your heart and just take a nice, deep, letting go breath. And I want to ask you a question. Where are you letting fear of the future? Interesting, lost my connection. So where are you letting fear hold you back from loving your life? Are you maybe secretly unhappy with things? Depressed maybe? Hi, Heather Miller. Or maybe it's just a really dull ache, an emptiness, and you know that something is a little bit off and you're not quite sure how to change that. And what if the simplicity of all those surface symptoms of dis-ease, where you're putting yourself out of being easy, is just that old friend fear running your life or shutting you down? I always say fear is imagination without love. So how can you begin to fall back in love with your life again and kick that fear bully, that mafia mind that's pushing you away from your happiness into depression or anxiety, or maybe you're just so numbed down and exhausted that you don't even know what love looks like anymore, or what my science geek nerdy parts call disassociation or ambivalence, or maybe your style of not going into that uncomfortable part of wondering or getting some clarity on what it is that is keeping you away from loving yourself or loving your life, is avoidance of pain. The emptiness that maybe you are choosing over feeling and looking underneath the fear, because fear is always there to get your attention to something. And I don't know about you, it was quite interesting. I had a conversation with some friends of mine in America a couple of days ago, and I was telling them, that it's very normal for people in South Africa to just suck it up, to just manage the fact that they're not feeling safe behind their 6-foot walls and electric fences. I have a armed guard at my gate and panic buttons around our neck, and that's just kind of the way life is in South Africa. And they were like, really didn't know that about this place, that people are literally being killed over their cell phones or hurt. And that kind of happened to me a couple of years ago when, hello Kevin Ellis, I was in my home. I actually had a snapped Achilles tendon, so my leg was in plaster. My little girl Thalia was a baby, and I had an au pair in the house to help me with her because I couldn't drive and couldn't walk, and she was here to help me. And I will never forget that moment of absolute sheer terror of looking up and seeing a man holding my baby with a gun to her head, telling me to be quiet. And it was just that moment of absolute disbelief that after everything else that I had come through, where I had finally had this baby of my dreams and a new life after many scares with death, many close encounters with death, before that with health issues and debilitating depression, which I know really, really well, that my fight flight just kicked in, and I was having to do whatever I possibly could to make sure that this life that I had worked so hard to rebuild was not going to be taken away from me. And it just brings me back to what I really wanted to talk about today, which is, you know, when we're gripped with that kind of survival mechanism, fear is there to keep us safe, to keep our bodies safe. Oh, Kevin, thank you. Good to see you too. And I know you totally relate. So those of you that are tuning in from South Africa or from Zimbabwe or anywhere else where you're living this kind of life, where we've just kind of desensitized, where the statistics are that 9 out of 10 people that I speak to that come into my practice, into my clinic, to help them resolve some kind of trauma, and I'm not even talking about the big traumas like armed robberies or home invasions or carjackings, which have been... I'm not quite sure why I keep losing my connection today. Such a serious subject. But I want to just know, so don't check out of here, because we're not talking about living in war zones. I really want to just talk about this underlying fear that numbs us out and takes us away from living our lives fulfilled and happy and everything else. Hi, Heather, Montreal. Yeah, so this is probably quite an interesting conversation, and what I cover a lot in adverse childhood experiences, and why it's so important to heal at the level of the nervous system, is that the only way to come back to living is to come back and be present. So, you know, whatever your style attachment is, however you're kind of living your life, feeling maybe things are just a little bit off, or that you want more, that has become my life's work, because I went from that moment of being totally shut down, totally in fear, being afraid all the time, not feeling safe in my own home, looking around. For some of you that watch me do Facebook Lives from my car, I'm always kind of looking around, because it's not safe to sit in your car, at least in this country, because there are people out there that are desperate, that will do anything, including kill people, to get what they want. So, you know, I really beat myself up about this for a long time, and even though I've been doing this work for 15 years, I was really being hard on myself, because I was like, even though I trained in psychotherapy and all this brain work, and I had all these tools, and I knew cognitively that I had to create my own safety, the human part of me was totally paralyzed and shut down in fear. And then it got shut down in anger. And you know, when you turn anger inwards, you stew in your own juices. It's kind of like swallowing the poison and expecting another person to die. And I was pissed off. I was really pissed that with all the tools that I had, with all the support, with all the knowledge, that knowing that I couldn't stop running from the fear of the vision that what could have happened differently that day, that things could have turned out very, very differently. They could have killed my daughter. They could have killed me. At one point I thought that, you know, this was it. They were going to rape me. And worse, they could have killed my whole household. My gardener was there, locked in the toilet. The au pair was there. It was traumatizing. And even though this happens every day in South Africa, you know, my neighbor was shot in his driveway, dead, two or 3 months ago, in front of his fiance. And you know, and it's just like, it's not fair. Okay, and this has nothing to do with fairness and rightness. It has to do with how are we going to create safety for ourselves in a world that right now feels very unsafe. And even though we're not having physical lions and saber-toothed tigers chasing us for dinner, and we don't have that collective of living in tribes where we had eyes on us, where if we slept, the other had our back, we don't have that anymore. And now we've created even more separation and even more loneliness, because we're living in very in a lot of isolation. You know, we're living in our little boxes with our electric fences, and our kids, you know, it upsets me that my child can't ride up the road or walk herself up the road to go and play with a friend because it's not safe. So how do we start to get past this feeling of that I am not safe? You know, I'm seeing more chronic conditions of asthma and psoriasis and all these places where our skin can't breathe, where we're feeling so shut down. Hello, Carol, all my favorite people on here. It's showing up in so many different ways for so many different people, and that is really why, you know, if I made that choice, that if I was going to show up and help other people heal from trauma, whether it was the big traumas or this chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress, whether you don't know if you're going to make it home from work because someone's going to, you know, try and hijack your car. I am having a hard time with the internet today. So anyway, as I said, it was like I was not going to let fear eat me up alive and spit me out. So I committed my life to recoding this link between the mind and the body connection to fear. And I'm not talking about the fear, the rational fear that keeps us alive, that keeps us out of danger. I'm talking about the fear of the unknown, the irrational fear. So I researched and I learned and I did somatic experiencing and I worked with this stuff in the trenches of my own therapeutic process of healing from multiple compounded stresses that had built up over time. And some of you know that before the robbery was just another trigger that reactivated disease in my body that had been building for a long time. Excuse me. So, you know, and I've been practicing and working with my own clients in my private practice on a way that everybody could return to love, to heal from these unresolved traumas, these unconscious commitments, by resetting their nervous system, to get that reticular activating system talking to the amygdala, talking in a way that stops you from running away from living fully expressed, living in your happiness because of a state of fear, literally robbing your joy. And how we are creating prisons in our own minds that are keeping us away from that. So unless you're living in an active war zone or in a place where fear has just become the norm, because the evidence proves that it's not a safe place, like South Africa, you have to realize that the hope is, there is hope. Because when you change your mind, and you change the way that you're feeling about it, you change the behavior. And that is the holistic approach to the lifestyle medicine that I teach. And your life becomes beautiful again, even though it's the awareness of how do I create my own safety. So are we all living in that constant state of hypervigilance all the time? Some of us are. But it doesn't have to kill you or rob you of your joy. You know, if someone had a gun to the back of your head and you are in mortal danger, we can be so deeply in appreciation that our nervous system kicks into that fight, flight, freeze response to get you to ensure that whatever it takes, you keep yourself alive, like I did in the case of that armed robbery. And maybe some of you have stories to relate. So losing that expectation. Heather, explain what you mean by that. I'm not quite sure, and I didn't quite see the whole of your thread. So do you have a question there in regards to fear? And while I'm waiting for you to type that in, I'll just keep talking about my Friday fearless and free daily dose of true nature medicine. So yeah, you know, it's like we don't have a gun to the back of our head all the time, and yet most of the world is living from this place that is like we have a gun to the back of our head all the time. And fears running your life. Fear of what is the future going to hold. Well, you can't know that. You can't know that. We're human. It is a messy experiment, and it can either take you away from your joy and your health and create sickness and depression and anxiety, or you can take it by the horns, so to speak, and stop scaring the crap out of you. And how do you do that? You got to speak your truth. You got to ask for what you want. A lot of things are going to happen that are outside of your control. A lot of things will happen for you. A lot of things won't. So instead of living in fear of what might happen, what if you could use fear to inform you instead of dominating your feelings, paralyzing you, holding you back? And the fastest, quickest way to do that. Okay, I'm back again. So, how do you face your fear? Look at what you're afraid of. Ask yourself, if I choose this, is it going to kill me? What is the worst that could happen? And then you can use fear to inform you rather than dominating your feelings and your response to the world. And you can't do that if you're not present. A confused, frightened mind never chooses. So, as my mentor Monty Roberts says, learning up, you have to get your adrenaline down. Best, fastest way to do that is breathe. Focus on your breath. Feel the sensation in your body. And catch the belief before it becomes your reality. And another great way to do this is to journal. If you're an insomniac that can't sleep because your mind is going over and over, and if you have a dolphin brain, I'll talk about that in another conversation, but the chronotypes of what you are. If you're a dolphin brain, like I am, half your brain is always awake. Some of that is environmental. I know that half my brain is never deep in sleep because it's tuned in and listen to every single little sound. And although my heart isn't racing at 100 knots anymore, that's just my makeup, right? Adapting to your environment. So doing a brain dump before you go to bed at night is a really good way to get you out of that high arousal. Treat your body like you would a baby before you go to sleep. Practice good sleep hygiene. And do the dump so that all the things you're worried about, all the things that you're concerned about, you can put them on paper. I also like to ask, if there's something that I want clarity on, if there's a question that I've been asking and I want to get some clarity on it, I will write that question on a pad of paper that is next to my bed, so that I can know that while I sleep, I can ask for that clarity instead of ruminating and worrying about it all night long, which I still do occasionally. And of course, the other way to get your nervous system to calm down is breath work. Box breathing is fantastic. 4 breaths in, hold for 4, release for 4, and when your lungs are empty, hold that for 4, and then incrementally expand how long you can do it, and then do that with walking. But meditation is another great way to just bring yourself down into your body, into your surroundings. Tracking is a great way, and I go through all of this in great detail in my Out of the Blues course. But just know that you can really increase the way that you're responding to life rather than reacting to threats and everything else in your waking time, so that you don't live from this place of fear and anxiety. I missed what you said there, Karen. My question is, why do I want others to live like me? Why do I want others to go, I have to put my glasses on, to go and earn a living and meet their needs? Why do I impose my neediness on others? That's a great question. So so what is the need? What is the need there underneath thinking that people are going to do anything the same as you? We're all here to experience our own have our own experience. And I think one of the quickest ways to get out of the people pleasing and the addictive kind of points of views that we have of why people choose the same insanity over and over again, the askholes, as I call them, people that ask for advice and then do the exact opposite, is to just know that people are going to show up and be exactly who they are. There goes disappointment, there goes, any expectations. To let go of any expectation is a really good place to do that. Why do you impose your neediness on others? Are they being a mirror for you? What is it that you back again? So as I was saying, what is it that mirror of the person that's triggering you has on a part of you that's perhaps ready to resolve? Sometimes we get what we ask for. So, if there's something in us, I think this is why the mindset and the inner work is so important, is see it as a gift. See it for exactly what it is, and don't have those kind of expectations on yourself to think that it's got anything to do with you in how those people are responding to you. Just see it as interesting. It's just a point of view. I hope that helped a little bit. You were hijacked. Yeah. Delayed. What did you say here, Anjana? Delayed reaction caused major anxiety and fear. Yeah, it's crazy time, and that's why I think it's so important. Another part of this is to know that you're not alone. Understanding fear, you can choose to ask for your needs without guilt or shadow side. Yeah, what is the fear wanting you to know? What's underneath that? And in these cases where we're talking about big traumas like that, I think it's really important to have support, to have someone that holds that space, that can just be there for you. That neediness that I talked about the other day. We've been told that we have to be independent, that we have to lift our game, that we have to get over it, the same as grief. There is no prescribed time for grieving. There is no prescribed time to get over anything. And I think that when we're in those spaces, what I quickly discovered was I didn't need help. I didn't need to be fixed. I didn't need to be distracted from my own inner process of those 5 stages of shock and trauma, of grief, of anger, of all the emotions that came up, and also that program that was running over and over in my mind of all the things I could have done differently that might have averted that or not caused that experience to have happened. That is not very useful. We don't need people to feel sorry for us. We don't need anyone to, take us out for ice cream to numb over or gloss over our pain. And I think the danger in that is that when we're not able to have a safe space to integrate the experience, this is where I see it over and over again in my own practice of people that have unresolved trauma, whether it's from childhood, whether it was in utero, whether it was from a narcissistic abusive relationship 20 years ago. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but if it isn't expressed and integrated in a healthy way, our body holds on to trauma, right? Time does not heal, it conceals. So get support, get help so that you don't end up with chronic disease. Fibromyalgia, I see a lot of that, ME, all these kind of immune system failures are coming because we're literally eating ourselves up from the inside. Our cells start attacking ourselves because they don't know what is a real threat and what is an imagined threat, right? Our body responds the same way. So, we don't need advice in those situations. We don't want to numb down. We don't want to get distracted. We just want to be able to have a quietness, a stillness within, to feel that and somatically release that in our body, because your intuition is telling me, or certainly was telling me, that everything I needed in order to get through the pain had to be an internal process. So when I was paralyzed with fear, when I was paralyzed with pain, maybe you can relate to this, and Jonna, what I needed was so simple. I just needed someone to hold a safe space for me so that I could calm my nervous system down enough to take care of myself. And this is what I find really curious is in that request for space holding, why it's so triggering for some people. What is that? Where we kind of can't just show up and be able to ask for what we need. I think I'm back again. I think I'm gonna try and close this up, but I think it definitely, if you're interested in this, we'll continue the conversation again. I seem to be having problems with my fiber today, but I think that especially if you're a lot of you that are tuning into this are therapists, and you are coaches, and you are healers, and I think we forget that we need the people to touch us. We need to appreciate the baker who makes our bread, or the person who massages us, or the acupuncturist that needles us. And we have to give ourselves permission to ask for what we want, because without intimacy, if we can't see into ourselves, right, to see the part of us that's ready to confront the fear or move into that. And it takes courage, to answer that call. And what does courage mean? It means come back to your heart, to trust what you know. And I think this sort of translates again is that you can't show up and do the work in the world if you're afraid of failing, if you're afraid of rejection, if you're afraid of being visible. You can't show up. And when we are answering the call, when we are asked to be more present in greater recognition of our purpose, of our calling, you have to look at the fear and the insanity and the insecurities that come up about it. You have to confront it in an honest way and receive the insight. You have to ask, because you can't go backwards. Once you've got that awareness, you can't go back to the old status quo. Part of it, the part of us that exists in that comfort zone of hiding or of being afraid. What will happen if you don't change those old operating systems? So what if you fail? What if you lose? What if you experience pain and loss? You're going to anyway. It's part of the human experience. But what if you could move through it from a place of responding in a healthy way, rather than reacting and forcing and trying to get through things, and not giving yourself the space to really fully feel that in your body? What happens? What's the cost of walking away from your happiness, of walking away from what you came here to do in the world? And I really believe that we go through the experiences in our lives because that is what we've come here to share with other people. So if you're not willing to move through the fear, if you're not willing to act as if, so what if, what is the worst case scenario? Going there, you kill your dreams, you kill your purpose, and you kill that aspect of your spirit, of your soul, that really wants you to get in touch with who you are and what you came from, so that you don't get into this place of depression and pain and trying to avoid it. And I get it, that the fear of not feeling safe, of not having your needs met, it's not true, and yet the fear takes us there all the time. And I know, I spent a large amount of my life feeling depressed because I was too afraid to step out of the old ways that weren't serving me, that were going against my true nature. And it was probably one of the most painful periods of my life. Do I get visited by my dear friend depression? Do I get visited by anxiety? Do I have sleepless nights, up worrying and doubting whether absolutely. But what if it didn't have to run your life? And what if, as I said before, you can use fear to inform you rather than dominate your feelings by being in the present moment, to use the tools of orienting to feeling, to tapping into your body. Because the only way to catch that belief is to catch it before you become your reality. Your thoughts shape your mind, and your mind tells your body how to respond. So what if you could use the energy in a healthy way to take you toward what you want rather than away from your joy and your happiness? You know, you deserve love. And I know that sometimes it's not easy to choose something better to liberate you from these mental prisons that we create, that fear creates through us. And you can't change what's happened to you, but you can certainly change how to transform your life through it. My pleasure, Heather. I'm so glad to see you here. Fear exploring the comfort. Yeah, what does true comfort look like for you? You know, when were you last deeply happy? I think Napoleon Hill said it beautifully, that if you don't conquer the fear, if you don't conquer yourself, you'll be conquered by yourself. You know, and I would add, if you don't conquer fear, and that's not about pretending you're not afraid. It's about knowing that in this moment I am deeply afraid, and then being willing to get curious about what's really going on underneath the fear, because there's always something else. And remember too, none of this is your fault. Most of it is the bad programming of this reality, the insane asylum that we are all committed to. And we get a lot of this is inherited, right? We inherit our familial trauma and our ancestral trauma and our cultural trauma and the trauma of South Africa. You know, it's like a lot of time what helped me move through creating safety in an unsafe, chaotic environment where it is unpredictable. Every day it is chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress, because you don't know what's gonna happen. None of us have that control. The only thing we get to control is how we show up in that space of aligning with our vision and our mission and our purpose, and knowing that I am safe, that I have the power to create my own safety, and going there and getting support. Okay, so that whole thing around conquering self, or else you'll be conquered with self, or conquering fear, I like to say loving fear, loving what arises in the fear, and really getting down into looking at how do I do the work, how do I master living in a world that is not always safe, and going there, you know, consciously direct your thoughts to the positive and the meaningful. You know, you will be conquered. You will kill your dreams. You will kill your joy. You will kill the love that you have for yourself, the appreciation that you have for what is working for you. If you keep going into that downward spiral of negative patterns and holding those old stories and experiences that you had that were challenging, that were life-threatening in place. You know, I live with a brain tumor that is inoperable, and I love that it's sleeping. I work really, really hard to manage my thoughts, because I don't want that to wake up and start causing havoc or threaten my life. I have a beautiful child as my growth partner, and I want to see her grow up. And when often I have to catch myself when I go into those things, that self-defeating inner saboteur voice that says, why bother? You know, that wants to shut me down in fear of, oh my gosh, you know, I could have an explosion in my head and die. And there are so many people, it breaks my heart, so many young people that are literally having heart attacks or having myocardial infections and brain tumors bursting in their heads, because they are living from this place of constant fear and not allowing themselves to feel it or get support or be needed. Ask for what they want. So just all right, I'm back. I'm late to take my daughter to her horse riding lesson. I hope that was helpful. Post your comments and questions below. Let me know how I can support you, and stay posted. I am going to be running another 5 days of free training on secure attachment and how you can live happy, healthy, and free on your own terms. So if that interests you, just know, in the meantime, be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to be self-aware, and ask for what you need from those who want to take care of you and take care of yourself. Okay, because you matter and your work is important in the world, and you cannot do that when you're running from anxiety and lack and scarcity. So have a beautiful Friday wherever you are. Post your comments below. Let me know what you want and how I can support you in getting that. And have a great day. Love you lots. Bye. Mwah.